Welcome, everyone. I am Liz DeLuna, a professor of graphic design and chair of design incubation and director of programming. So welcome to our 10-year anniversary event of design incubation. Welcome to people online. Welcome to people here. We are very proud of the last 10 years of design incubation and the amount and diversity of educators, students, and professionals that we have been able to present their research and practice. So I'm just going to do a little stroll down memory lane of the last 10 years of design incubation, hopefully a quick little stroll. So basically, I'm just going to go through our sort of history of colloquia and panels, which are the things that I have been most involved with. There are lots of other design incubation initiatives, for example, the writing fellowships and the awards, which other design incubation members are going to talk about later in the session. So as I was putting this together, it was actually quite impressive to see what a totally volunteer organization with zero funding can accomplish. So we started in 2014. Our first event was at AIGA. So this was nostalgia moment number one, was the old AIGA space on Fifth Avenue, at this point long gone. And it was a small little event. We even listed our attendees. And I did actually a presentation at that initial event on the ABCs of type design. So at this point, we established a Picha Kucha format. So the format was 20 slides, 20 seconds each, and that would be a total of 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And we really did, in the beginning, try to stick to that format. So then we went on to colloquia at City Tech, and I wish I could see, and Parsons, 2015. Colloquia at St. John's, at CUNY, at Pratt, and we did a road trip to RISD, where I believe Lisa Mayone instituted the idea of agenda, though I think it was an analog thing, so I don't have like a digital record of that. 2016, we were at St. John's, our first CAA, FIT. We went on a road trip to MCLA, Kane University, and here we started our panels. So this was the first panel conversation that we had. This was graphic arts and the liberal arts. And we had them, another nostalgia moment, at the now defunct CDC space, which does not look too glamorous here, but was a great space with really fond memories on 36th Street. So this panel, we had Alan Espiritu, Jessica Wexler, Nick Rock, Kelly Walters, Dan Wong, and Robin Landa. And we did here finally begin to take pictures to document, because I think in the past, previously we had been so busy running the events that we forgot to document. 2017, Parsons, we do have some images here. And this is also just a nice reminder of all of the great conversations that we had after the presentations. And a little piece of social media from Heather Quinn from that day, where she very cutely calls us Design Incubator. Another nostalgia moment. We were off to Kent State. Another panel, this one called Teaching Type. Thomas Jacquin, John Campbell, Amy Papilius, and Juliet Cesar. And we also had some of our students there, which was great. New Paltz, Kelly Walters presenting. More good conversations. San Jose State, so we went across the country. Another panel, devising design projects. And here we had Ned Drew, Alex Gerard, Debbie Millman, and Scott Santoro. 2018, CAA, we went to Los Angeles. We also had a special program on typography. there was a little socializing and imbibing that happened. We remembered to document that. But we also had a really fun field trip to Archetype Press at Hofmutz Milken Center for Typography. And we got to do some letterpress printing. So it was a nice group excursion. We had a panel on accessibility at General Assembly. Elizabeth Guffey, Liz Jackson, Neil Ward, and Bo Campbell. Another panel called Portfolio Success at TDC. Christina Black, Michael McCauley, Holly Tenkin, and Peter Lush. Little social on that. Parsons, DePaul, 2019, CAA in New York. We went to Merrimack, got some documentation of that, and another little fun excursion, a group excursion to the Museum of Printing. Panel on, again at TDC, practicing type in the age of screens. And we had Jason Pamental, Javier Viramontes, who's here today, Nancy Campbell, and Ksenia Samarskaya. We went to Quinnipiac, and then came 2020. So it started out good, CAA in Chicago, and then everything went virtual. So Fordham and Oakland University, 2021, more virtual, CAA, Florida Atlantic, that Camilla hosted, Seton Hall. 2022, still virtual, Kent State and CAA. 23, a little more virtual. And takes us to 2024, where we again went to CAA. This time it was hybrid, so we both had online and in person with the lovely Heather Quinn here. Which brings us to today, here where we are now, 10 years later, back at St. John's University. And we are looking forward to the next 10 years. So thank you. And we are going to move now to Eris. So.
Okay, so if we've learned anything today, we've learned the hybrid format. I think we've gotten, we're good in person. We're gotten in the last few years very good online and Zoom. This hybrid format, I think we're still trying to get used to. But the great thing about it, I don't know if all of you can see our participants up there. We've got 21 people here. We've got a bunch of people in this room and we couldn't all be together without this sort of dual format, even if there's a few hiccups along the way. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Eris Sharon. Have run the Design Writing Fellowship for 10 years now, as we know by this event, and previously was Director of Fellowships at Design Incubation. So thank you to Dan and Liz and Camilla and Heather and Jess and everybody for inviting me back to talk about the fellowship. So this is another there's a little bit of a trip down memory lane, but also just for those of you who might have been curious about what happens at that fellowship and should I apply or shouldn't I apply, or what is that thing, I thought I'd kind of do a little bit of a combination here. So 10 years, we've got 3 tracks: books, articles, and reviews, and you'll hear a little bit, maybe a tad bit more from Robin later on. And our facilitators are or have been Liat Verdugo, Elizabeth Guffey, Robin Landa, myself, and Maggie Taft, who may pop in, surprise guest, but not yet. And we spend time thinking about writing, editing, publishing, strategies and methodologies and formats for those things, and collaboration, connection, and community. So people say, like, what is this thing? So it's 3 intense days, and we'll get to sort of that format. Right now it is all virtual, so 3 days on Zoom and on Miro boards with facilitators, but then you're committing to doing 6 months of writing, at least 6 months of writing in addition to that. Now, we know that most writing projects probably take more than 6 months. So that's what we ask people to commit to, but oftentimes it may be several years before their project is actually published. And so over the last 10 years, we've had over 150 participants from dozens of universities around this country and abroad, mostly in UK, Itland mostly, but we've had people even coming from Hong Kong. Boy, the time change. I mean, me being bright and cheery at 9 in the morning is one thing, but like they started at 9 o'clock at night, and amazingly, for the most part, people who've come the furthest from the furthest virtually, have still been great participants. I'm not sure I would be able to do that. So what happens? We provide information. And so some of what we're doing is we're thinking about kind of the publishing, the apparatus that happens to get your writing work or your research out there viewed by other people. And we think about like, that can feel like a black box or like, really opaque to especially new faculty, but even faculty maybe from practice-based backgrounds who've been around for a long time, but haven't been doing this kind of work. So part of what we do is just like demystify that and provide some information. And so here's an example of that from this past fellowship, which just happened the 29th, 30th, and 31st of May. And then, in terms of that information, we're thinking about, information about the writing process. We're thinking about editing, about pitching, and then actually about publishing. So we might be doing a deep dive onto like, what is MIT Press looking at in terms of book proposals versus a publisher like Bloomsbury. Previously, we were looking at the difference. We were actually doing a great exercise where we looked at where you would publish different kinds of content, which journal you would choose, and we did a little exercise around that. We talk about the process, like how do we actually get this idea we have to turn into something that is published? And there's many different ways to go about that. And so here we have Liat Verdugo giving us a view on her project around Israel-Palestine and the video archive there and sort of the journey of that to get even to a book proposal. So you'll see she did some publication, she did some conference talks, she did a public scholarship essay before she got to writing the book. And it's a nice idea that like some of the work you've already been doing around your projects is the groundwork to doing the next publishing thing, whether it's an article or a book that you want to do. And then we think about process and how it applies in real life. And our different facilitators have really different methods for doing that and really different approaches. So here's Liat. She actually very physical. After she has a draft or some writing, she actually cutting up pieces and putting them together on her floor, right? And so that's one approach. And we think about different people and different people's approach, because what works for our fellows is obviously going to be just as diverse as the different practices out there. And we foster community. And this is 10 years, this is a look back. I couldn't resist saying that the fellowship started here in this building and for many years was held upstairs. So this is actually a floor above us here at St. John's. And we foster that community in person and online. And I was just saying to a couple of people who I haven't seen in a few years who are here in this room that, it's seeing some of these photos for those of us who've been involved in this for a long time is a little bit bittersweet, because there was something wonderful about getting everybody in a room together for 3 days and what happens there. And so now we are online. And so what you'll hear from people is you'll hear some people say, oh, I kind of wish I had that excuse to come to New York. Like, Camilla was saying she was happy to come to New York, right? But then you have a whole bunch of other people who have maybe personal obligations or obligations at their institution that make that impossible. So we hear from just as many people who say, I'm so grateful for the access of Zoom and Miro and the way we have been able to move things virtually, because I wouldn't have been able to do this otherwise. And then we've had some just absolutely tremendous participants, some of whom are in this room here today. over the last years, and amazing participants, of course, produce incredible outcomes. And so here's a few of the books. And if you follow Megan D or Jessica on social media, you might have seen that their book, Working with Design Clients, is actually just came out for pre-order. So that is, you know, and yeah, it's amazing. And Alison Place's book, you would have had to be like stuck under a rock, maybe on the North Pole or the moon, to not have heard of that one. And so these are projects that are, you know, the ideas for them did not originate in the Design Writing Fellowship, but the way in which they thought about negotiating how to take those ideas and move them forward through to the publication process and finding a publisher, that was pivotal to being part of the Design Writing Fellowship. And there's many more. So we've had over 50 reviews published, books and exhibition reviews. We've had over a dozen articles, and I have to say, like, I got lazy on the articles after a dozen trying to figure out, because oftentimes the title of somebody's article would change over the years, and I was trying to go back and I was like, you know, it's more than a dozen. I can't be asked to count more than that. And we've had at least 10, I counted 10 books before I again sort of was like, okay, that's enough, to show, you know, to demonstrate that the participants have really done amazing work, not just during that fellowship in the 6 months that they're asked to commit to their projects, but afterwards. And I really want to emphasize, for those of you who maybe are thinking about doing this in the future, you know, totally shameless plug. But for those of you who are thinking about doing this in the future, if at the end of 3 days you realize that writing isn't for you, or you realize that you don't want to take the project you came to the fellowship with further, I think of that as just as much of a win, as do the other facilitators. Because I don't know how many of you have had those conversations at your institution with your colleagues. Oh, I have an idea for an article, or oh, I have an idea for a book, and it sits there, and should I apply for funding? Should I try and get release time? Should I spend more time on this than my creative projects? I mean, that can happen over months or sometimes even years. So the way we see it is like, if in 3 days you can figure out, hey, this is a thing, maybe I don't want to do this till I have tenure, or this is a thing, and hey, it's cool that all of you want to do this, but you know, I've decided that I want to re-engage with my creative process. Like that just took maybe months or even years of that sort of water cooler talk and condensed it into 3 days, and allowed you to focus on the things that are most meaningful to you. So all of the facilitators of the Design Writing Workshop want to say a huge thank you to Design Incubation for making all of this possible, for the support, for the logistics, like we saw today with like getting, you know, for text logistics, for outreach, for operations, providing a platform and a way to connect to an audience. And then I think maybe most importantly, also, as we think not just about the previous 10 years, but about the 10 years going forward for Design Incubation. Design Incubation really provides a place to incubate an idea, right? You can have a crazy idea that is hard to get off the ground, or there's just a couple people at your institution, and you find community that helps you elevate that idea. And that's thanks to Design Incubation. And then for us, like a place to realize a vision. So you know, I had a German idea when I thought about the Design Writing Fellowship, got support from Design Incubation, got a lot of support from my co-facilitators and how to get that idea into something that somebody else would be part of, and of course feedback from participants. And it has really matured into what it is today. So we are absolutely looking forward to the next decade of DI. I couldn't finish without just a last shameless plug in case people are interested in our TV watching audience or here in the room. We are now at Writing Space Chicago, which is an organization run by my colleague, co-facilitator Maggie Taft. And we are sharing space with other writing programs, writing spaces exclusively designed towards writing programs for people in the visual arts, primarily design faculty. And this is a link, and of course you can, you know, Google will help you get there as well, but we have other programs as well. We have writing groups, and there's a residency. And this year we did like a baby book proposal group because we had so many applicants for the regular fellowship book writing group. So that's a little bit about us, but the biggest thing that I want to emphasize is that none of this would have been possible without Design Incubation. So a big thank you to Design Incubation. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Does everyone see my title slide?
Yes.
Okay. Cultures of Excellence, Lessons Learned from 8 Years of the Communication Design Educators Awards. And whoa, that's me, Stephen McCarthy. I think emeritus is a fancy Latin term for unemployed because as a retiree, that's what I am now. I'm still happy to be involved with the discipline, happy to be presenting here today and sharing some of my experiences with the award. The first little background and rationale for how it was created. So the College of Design at the University of Minnesota has a lot of other design disciplines. There's architecture and interior design and product design and apparel design and landscape architecture and so on. So I kept seeing on other candidates' CVs and announced in the college website newsletter about people getting awards, particularly for education in their discipline. I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if graphic design had a similar kind of program, an award for communication design educators? So looking at the AIGA medalists, you can see the names in pink are among sort of the few whose primary roles are as communication design faculty. Most of the AIGA medal is for practitioners, professionals who create graphic designs and get them published or produced and lubricate the economy, right, through advertising and posters, websites, packaging, and you name it. So I proposed an idea to the AIGA in 2012. I was encouraged by then President Doug Powell. And so for a couple of years, I was in communication with the AIGA DEC, the Design Education Committee, where the proposal was revised and things sort of slowly moved forward and basically died for lack of interest on their behalf. And I heard through a friend that they thought I was being just a bit too pushy with it. Anyway, I repackaged the idea and proposed it to Design Incubation, which had the good insight to accept the idea and move forward with it. And in 2016, we had the first year of the Communication Design Educators Awards. And it's been going strong for 8 years since. So part of what makes our award different from the AIGA medalist program is that our values are related particularly to design academia. And so, the 4 criteria that we give the awards in, scholarship, publication, scholarship, creative works, teaching, and service, is really particular to academic culture. These are both sort of roles we have in the academy and sort of the way that our work gets out there, through teaching and mentoring, influencing young people, creating new knowledge for the profession through research and creative practice and so on. Service, much like we're doing now, right? Presenting at conferences and doing things that are sort of woven into the general other duties as required category. So, many years ago, I was a professor for 31 years and practiced graphic design before that. Kind of the professional gold standard is the award as given out by magazines like the Print Regional and Communication Arts, How, Graphice, the AIGA awards, and so on. A lot of these don't apply to what academics do. They're largely beauty contests, and they really don't dig deep as to what the context was for something or why it was important or what the outcome was and so on. So it's fine to get these awards, but they really just didn't apply to what the current communication design academic does. At the University of Minnesota, we developed this design scholarship matrix, which kind of helps visualize the depth and the breadth of what design academics do. And I should say that this applies to a college where there are, designers, artists, engineers, social scientists, humanists. We just have a variety of faculty with different kinds of backgrounds. And I would also say that the majority of the faculty have PhDs, and I was actually the first tenured full professor MFA. So there are a number of MFAs, a number with the MArch, which is the architecture terminal degree. But most of my colleagues do have PhDs. So this type of matrix was helpful in kind of visualizing the journey that a work of scholarship might go through. And if you want to get a copy of this, email me later and I'll be happy to send you the document. So in terms of attracting applicants or nominating people for the Communication Design Educators Program, the award program, typical things that we ask for, the title, the category, and so on. But one thing I think is really important for our program is that we're interested in outcomes. So when people submit work, we're curious about why, what did it do? What was the impact? Did it inform people? Did it change minds? Was it influential in some way? So people use their narrative to describe that. It provides a really sort of three-dimensional, fully contextualized reason for why a piece of communication design was important. The final little entry at the bottom there, a modest $20 fee is required. And if you compare that to what the AIGA competition or the print regional charge, which is upwards of $300 for an entry, it makes the $20 look pretty modest by comparison. So I think this is such a token amount that we ask for. It's really what lunch costs, right? So it's just a small amount to help fund some of the initiatives. In terms of composing the jury, we try to put together a really diverse group of mostly senior faculty in the field. We typically have 5 or 6 jurors per year. There are a number of repeat jurors on there. I've chaired a number of the juries, but it's been chaired by others as well. So, we're interested in sort of senior faculty who have had a depth of experience. We're also interested in people from different geographic areas, including international, and, different kinds of schools, universities, colleges, art academies, and the different kinds of terminal degrees, MFA, obviously, PhD, others out there, ED. And the jurying process, unlike the double-blind peer review, which is the gold standard in academic culture, where the submitter and the judge or the jury are unknown to each other, there's complete anonymity. Ours is the opposite. We know who the applicants are, and the applicants know who the jury is. And yet this requires us to be ethical and maintain confidentiality in the jurying process. We typically go through 3 rounds, and we have a spreadsheet so people can write in comments and see each other's comments. And we do this for a couple of rounds and then typically arrive at consensus, but sometimes we do take a final vote to determine the winners or the runners-up. The jury can award multiple awards, multiple runners-up, or no awards if it's deemed that submissions to a category lack the merit for national distinction. And finally, the jury chair shepherds the process, but all the votes have equal weight, and that the jury is autonomous from the design incubation leadership as well. In terms of the results, it's been great seeing the variety and the quality of work that's out there. So I'm just going to go through one example from each of the 4 categories. So in the scholarship creative work category, Kareem Kali's Portraits of Obama project, a very lively, rich visual. This is actually published eventually in the AIGA Dialectic as a 8 or 10 page spread. Jen Stucker and Heidi Neese's winner in the service category. It was sort of an event, symposia around Native American creativity. It consisted of conferences and breakout sessions and social events and so on. So kind of this, both the design of the event, but also the larger idea around why it's an important thing to do. My thing is okay. Aggie Toppins, my little control bar is blocking my caption. In the teaching category, this past year, teaching design history methods in a studio context. So, a lot of our student learners are very, very visual and very hands-on. They want to make things and do things. And so getting them to sort of experience the book learning or the more academic aspect of learning about design history. So in her pedagogical experience with this class, she merges these two activities and created a rich experience for the students. And finally, Dory Griffin's Published Scholarship Award for the special issue of the Journal of Visible Language on the history of visual communication design. So it exemplifies a lot of what we're looking for around the rigor and the depth and the variety of scholarship, and the sort of the kind of the ranking or visibility of the journal or the publication. So successful all around. And then finally, we hope that the recipients of the awards enjoy the bragging rights, put it in their CV, and we do little certificates. This past year, Taekyom Lee, a professor at University of Wisconsin, did a nice little 3D printed trophy that spins on a solar-enabled little trophy base. So it's a lot of fun and interesting. So a few concluding thoughts as your word goes forward and approaches its 10th year. The numbers of applicants have been dropping off a little bit. So, increasing the number and making sure we do adequate promotion and advertising of the award and are timely with our deadlines and everything. So that's a goal. The idea of possibly hosting workshops for applicants, if they're interested in applying. People that might not get an award one year, what would a resubmission look like in terms of refinements or changes? Or maybe it would enliven things to have a live award ceremony that happens at some other hosting venue that I know sometimes the Design Incubation partners with the College Art Association or the AIGA to have its events at their larger venue. And we're certainly welcome to other ideas and suggestions. So I'll close it out by saying that you can reach me at now that I'm kicked off the University of Minnesota's website. I've got my own at stephenmccarthy.design, and that one link will get you to my design education consulting practice where I do some of this work here, but on a professional basis. All right. Well, thank you, and I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm not sure what the format is for accepting questions. I'd be happy to take them, whether they're in the chat or live. Okay.
Okay.
It's working here, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Liz. My name is Camila Afanador Jack. I am an associate professor of graphic design at Florida Atlantic University. I am also the director of peer review at Design Incubation since 2021. But I also was part of, let's see here. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. But I was also part of Design Incubation in the past in the writing fellowship and also as a presenter. I am very grateful for the space they have created and for the community. And I guess that's part of what I have been collaborating with them. The peer review process that I coordinate has the purpose of connecting reviewers with presenters that send their abstracts in a blind process, and ultimately to get them to receive feedback. Even though we cannot accept all the abstracts, we work very hard making sure that people get good feedback so that they can continue to evolve their work. For today's talk, what I decided to do is to look at the keywords that all the presenters have used in the past 10 years to describe their representations in the colloquia. And I wonder, what can we learn by looking at those keywords about the field of communication design research? And I went in as an experiment and see what I could find. So to get started, I spent a lot of time, as you did, Liz, on the website, collecting keywords for every single year from 2014 to 2023 and organize them by year and trying to figure out what to do with that. Not an expert in data or text analysis, but I decided to use this tool called Buoyant Tools, which is a tool for text-based, it's a text reading analysis, and see what I would get. So the first thing that I started doing was looking at word frequency and using some of the predefined, like the default visualizations embedded into the tool, which are these like very popular word clouds. And I mean, I had the option to change the font to Georgia instead of Palatino, but not much more than that, a little bit of color palette, but I used what I got. And I started just getting these visuals of what are the words that keep coming up year after year. And as we can see in these examples, every year we have design, research, education, communication, typography, sometimes pedagogy, interdisciplinary thinking are the ones that keep coming back every year. So everything seems to be dominated by design really at the center, really large, and then all these other accompanying terms coming up. As I was doing this, I was thinking of, and this is one that combines all the years together into one graph, and that gives us like how many words we had to start with, how many times the word design was used, which is a lot of times. But I started to think that this was a little bit limiting. And the first thing that I tried then was, okay, let me delete design, research, education, which are like the general terms that are over and over, and let me try and see what else can I see from here. So after spending a little bit of time here, I decided that I wanted more context to understand when the word design is being used and how. So I decided to do something a lot of people are doing today, is I asked ChatGPT. I put my full list of keywords and I asked them to help me identify not individual words, but like combination of words, terms, to get a sense of a little bit more context. So instead of just looking at design, I'm seeing now design pedagogy, I'm seeing interaction design, user experience design, communication design. So I'm starting to get a little more specific. And I'm thinking that this is allowing me to have a bit more context. Then I was also a bit of like, is this really telling me the truth or is this just making it up? So I just tested with a couple of terms and it was accurate, but I'm still, back and forth between how much what I'm getting back is true and how I can verify. So after doing a little bit of that, I went back to Buoyant Tools and say, okay, I want to get some phrases rather than individual words, again, in an attempt to see more context. And this list that I ended up getting helped me see a little bit of, I want to hide that, but I don't know. I don't know this. Yes, I should have done that from the beginning. A little bit more context and a list that seemed to be a little bit of an index type of situation that can help us see more nuances in the topics that have been actually discussed in all these events over time. And not only when design appears, but also some of the terms that keep coming up in the way that communication design researchers have been doing their work in the past few years. So after doing some of this, I continue the route of thinking about context and then jumped into a different tool. In this case, I jumped into a tool called PI Personal Intelligence, and I wanted to see what I would get back from them. I asked specifically, I want to see year after year what seems to be what has been covered. And I was trying to figure out also a little bit of a rabbit hole on trying to figure out how is this tool coming up to these conclusions, right? It was analyzing keywords, but also trying to summarize. And this is a list of my edited version of some of the conclusions that I was getting back that help us see year by year. And I will go over a few to not extend this too much. As we know, there's a lot of focus on pedagogy, typography, design research, digital technologies, but also engagement with diverse cultural contexts, and that keeps coming up every single year. Every year, we see engagement with social and cultural issues, a little bit more in the past few, but there's always explorations of topics like human-centered design, accessibility, participatory design, speculative design, environmental design, sustainability, emerging technologies always every single time, but also interdisciplinary work. And this question of interdisciplinarity is something that happens over and over. As we continue through the years, we see that the integration of new technologies like artificial intelligence starts to appear more often, mixed reality, machine learning. And then we see a lot of growing interest, which is a trend, and is also reflecting of what is happening outside of academia, of addressing environmental and social issues, but also topics like visual culture, gender, bias, reflecting on larger cultural conversations, as I just mentioned before. So there's a bit of a pattern here of the things that repeat themselves. Emerging technologies, but also 3D printing and digital fabrication starts to appear, and an increased attention to the impact of design in communities, but also the role of designers to shape the future. We see a lot more terminology around inclusive design, African-American history, gender roles, and of course, decolonizing design history, which goes in parallel with what is happening outside of design incubation, but in the field. So we've been pretty much participating on all of these cultural dynamics. And then 2022, 2023, we start seeing, of course, COVID-19 and a lot of reflections around that time period coming up. Interdisciplinary collaboration, but ethics starts to appear more often in what our presenters are showing us in the colloquium. So then to summarize what I've been seeing, I try to put this next to the slides, one that summarizes common themes, which is just in line with what I've been noticing when I was looking at all of these keywords of the themes that are happening over and over, but then the others that we kind of identify as emerging ones that seem to be coming more close. The notion that cultural identity, race, and gender are becoming much more central to the way we're engaging with our work, and global perspectives as seen in a growing interest for looking, for example, at typographic systems in other places in the world is something that I've noticed over and over. So this is as far as I got with my overview. As a summary slide, I kind of counted how many events are we talking about, how many presentations, how many individual works. I wanted to highlight that design incubation was started as a New York centered event, but it's been extending to many different places, either virtually or in person. And what I see, I'm not expert in any of these text analysis, but I see much more potential in asking more questions from these keywords but also looking into the titles, looking into the abstracts are potential places maybe to identify common arguments, common statements that are being repeated in these pieces of text. But I'm also very interested, for example, in looking at all the participants, their affiliations, where in the country, to really understand how much has design incubation covered in the last decade. And just to close, all of those abstracts are accessible in Design Incubation's website. It's like a great archive, and I'm sure that we can do more looking into that. And then lastly, if anyone wants to serve as a peer reviewer for Design Incubation, please get in touch. We're always looking for people that want to really dive into giving very generous feedback to their peers in an anonymous manner. Thank you so much.